Welcome to the Legit Lady Podcast, where we feature women who are nailing it in life. Hola, bonjour, hello, Legit Lady listeners. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am your host, Julie Federman, and I am so happy you're here to listen to the podcast where we feature impressive women to inspire the world. So this week, I've gotten a couple of really great emails, a couple of people who had some nice things to say about some of the episodes they listened to and shared some really great stories about how it's really touched them in their life and it's inspired them to open up in a couple of ways just because of the stories that we have been sharing. So thank you so much for that. And in true Legit Lady Podcast form, I'm going to hop over to some reviews here, and I'm going to pick a review that echoes something very similar. And our friend Ryan here on iTunes says, loved the Sana Said episode, solid financial advice. Thanks. And I really appreciate this, because like some of the emails we've been hearing, it's calling out a specific episode that really particularly touched them. And it's very funny how it's like sometimes the episodes that I think are going to get listened to the most are not necessarily the ones that are in number one place, even though they're incredible and amazing. But some of the episodes that I didn't think people would connect to as much because it might have been a bit of an edge case or something totally different are ones that people absolutely love. And so this is why we seek to represent such great diversity on the platform and on the podcast to make sure that you really cover the gambit. We offer all sorts of different perspectives, even if it's something that you might not necessarily either agree with or think you wanted to learn more about. I think that's a credible place of where podcasts come to share information with you that you didn't know that you wanted to know, or information you didn't know you needed to know in some cases. So thank you so much, Ryan. Please keep the reviews coming. They really do help. And for anyone looking to help us financially, so a great way to be able to support the podcast and cover the costs of hosting and running a podcast, because podcasting is not free, is to take us out for a virtual drink or virtual coffee, or just give us a little monetary high five. Is that a thing that people do, like a $1 high five? Just slip us a few bucks. That'd be great. Best way to do that is to go to ko-fi.com or coffee.com. So it's ko-fi.com/legitladypodcast. And there you can even write a few words, say, hey, thanks so much for what you're doing to help support women all over the world, and keep doing what you're doing. And I have to say, thank you to those of you who have been sharing the podcast to people that you care about in your life or just broadly on social media. Every day I'm seeing the reach of our podcast continue to grow. Our listening numbers keep growing. Our downloads are growing. And this podcast is international, baby. So keep it coming. I love seeing it. And I really, from the bottom of my heart, appreciate those of you who have been supportive of us since day one. Our guest this week is someone that I seeked out since now I've gone beyond the point with the podcast where I've tapped a lot of people on the shoulder who I know, people I kind of sort of know. And now I'm at the point where I'm like, okay, who would be a really cool person to bring on? So I'm sending Instagram DMs. I'm prospecting on LinkedIn. I am going everywhere to try to just bring on really cool, diverse voices. And this voice was one I reached out to because I thought she had a really cool job title. And that job title is a Chief Science Officer. Now, hands up if you know what a Chief Science Officer is or what they do. right? Neither do I. So that's why it caught my attention. I was like, this would be so cool to be able to bring on and understand a little bit more about what this means and what they do and how that even becomes a thing in the first place. So please give a very, very warm welcome to Sara Seabrooke. She's the Chief Science Officer and co-founder of Instant Chemistry, and her story is amazing. So happy to be on site and talking to you today, Sara. This is great.
Nice to meet you. Thank you for coming out here.
I know. I was in my Uber. I'm like, I don't think I've ever been this part of the city before, and I'm born and raised in Toronto.
You got to come out here more. It's kind of nice out here.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I have to say, when I found you on LinkedIn, I was really impressed by you. And I knew I had to have you on the podcast. So thank you for saying yes.
Oh, thank you. No, I'm looking forward to it.
Yay. Wonderful. All right. Well, since we might as well get started and jump in live. You know how this works. We get to know you through 10 main questions. Lots of great questions in between as follow-up, as you can see here by my very technical Post-it notes. And so with that, I'd love to get started and jump in live with question 1, which is, what advice would you give to your teenage self?
So I was thinking about that. And one thing that I probably would have said to myself is not to be so focused on like one particular goal. So when I was really young, I decided that I wanted to be a veterinarian very early on.
Me too. That's hilarious. That was totally my childhood dream. Although you went still in science and I did not.
Well, what happened as kind of a result from that was that I looked into all of the requirements to do it. Like I was like, I'm going to do this. And the requirements to get into the veterinary college was very much like, you need all of these science courses, you need chemistry, you need like math, you need all of this stuff. And as a result, I was very focused on trying to do all of that and focus on all of that. And I think sort of as a result from that, I didn't sort of venture out and try other things that I think I might have enjoyed. Like looking back on it now, I think that I would have enjoyed taking like an ecology, more ecology, like studying the plants and like taking courses where you go to like the Bahamas and you study the ecosystem there. And I didn't do that stuff because I was like, I need all of these courses and I have to do all of this and I have to meet all of these requirements. And I didn't let myself sort of explore. So I think what I would say to myself is it's okay to like, explore, try different things. Don't stay too focused on one thing and, let yourself try different things because maybe veterinary medicine isn't what's going to happen. And as you can see, I'm not a veterinarian. So
so you did branch out a bit.
Yeah. Well, actually wasn't really by choice because I did apply to the veterinary college and I had everything that I needed. But then I completely bombed on the interview when I went.
Oh no.
And so
what happened?
Well, I was too nervous. I think I had worked myself up too much. Like I was like, I worked in veterinary hospitals. I worked in like kennels and I did all of this stuff, all of this preparation. And I think I just psyched myself out. And when I went to the interview, I didn't prepare maybe enough and I just completely bombed it. And then I didn't get into the program, obviously. And then
even with all that experience, you were just too nervous?
I was just too nervous. And yeah, so it was, the thing was, I think after I didn't get in, I kind of thought to myself, I didn't really have the motivation to apply again the following year. And I felt like maybe, after getting the rejection letter, it kind of like made me sit back and like stop focusing on everything that I was doing and think about other things. And I was kind of like, well, maybe I don't actually want this that much because I don't have a desire to go back and apply for it again the next year. And I just kind of at that point, I kind of like let it go. And I was like, I'm going to do something else that I find interesting, something that I actually find interesting as opposed to me being like stubborn and stuck on this one particular goal.
Right.
So that's kind of when I started to branch out. And that's kind of when I sat back and I was like, I wish I'd kind of taken that ecology course or I'd kind of done this or that. But that's just that's just the way you live. So that's what I would go back and I would tell my teenage self or my younger self, to like not stay too focused on one thing, and allow yourself to explore different aspects of what you might want to do, because maybe you think of something when you're young, but that's not actually what's going to happen, or maybe not what you actually want to do when you get older.
Yeah.
So.
No, I mean, especially for some of the younger listeners who are like, yes, I'm going to be an astronaut or a marine biologist, just because that's sort of what your peers are saying that they want to do. It might be helpful to open up that idea to other options too. And just because you pursue one thing doesn't mean you have to be married to that one idea forever. But it sounds like it worked out for you serendipitously, because you somehow came from flunking your veterinary interview to co-founding this incredible company. So can you tell us a little bit about that journey in between?
Right. So when I was doing my undergraduate, I was taking a physiology course. It was animal physiology in my second year, and it was a requirement for, to take this stuff for veterinary medicine. Is part of the reason I was taking it. But the professor walked in, and within like a few lectures, I was like, this material is amazing. It is so interesting. I'm so I love coming to this class. I love learning about this stuff. It's really, 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 really interesting. And so I actually approached him and I said, I want to work in your lab because I love this stuff. I find it really cool. And if you believe it, I bombed on the job interview for that too.
Oh my gosh.
So it's actually
seems like a pattern here.
I think I psych myself out too much before I go into them. And then I just I think I would do better now. But when I was younger, it was harder for me. And I've been actually putting a lot of work into trying to be able to speak better in interview sessions. And
you're doing great.
Thanks. It's a lot of practice, and a lot of practice was in graduate school actually doing that. So I was actually one of 3 people to be interviewed, and I knew one of the other people who were interviewed, and he got the position. And I was actually friends with him, so I was kind of like, okay, well, I it's not so bad, I can't be upset with you for getting the position. So, but what happened was, I actually emailed the professor after, and I thanked him very much for taking the time to interview me, and that I really enjoyed what his taking his class and what I'd learned in it. And I still really appreciated it, what I'd learned from him. And then I said, if there's ever another job opportunity in your lab, I'd love if you consider me again for an interview. And a couple of months later, he actually emailed me back and said, you know what, I need an assistant to look at, it's not a research-based position, but it's looking after stuff in the lab. And he was like, do you want the position? And I said, well, yeah,
of course.
I want the position. So I got, as a result from that, I got a foot in the door into a research lab in a university. And it was a lot of fun. I learned, it was a Drosophila lab. I don't know if you know Drosophila melanogaster. They're fruit fly.
No, it's not in my vernacular personally. Feel free to share what that means.
So Drosophila melanogaster is actually a fruit fly. It's your typical fruit fly. Yeah, and it's Drosophila.
Drosophila.
Yeah, Drosophila melanogaster. Melanogaster is the species.
Melanogaster. It sounds like something from Game of Thrones almost.
Yeah, maybe. If you look at them close enough, they kind of look like something freaky from Game of Thrones.
The House of Melanogaster.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
So Drosophila are actually a very well-established model in research. They're a genetic model. The first mutation was found in Drosophila. The discovery that genes are actually carried on chromosomes were found in Drosophila. It's huge. Drosophila, there's databases where you can go and you buy fruit flies with particular mutations, and they have all kinds of gene regulation. It's a very, very advanced genetic model. You can get a Drosophila and you can turn on and off a gene in just the nervous system, for example.
Wow.
Yeah, I used to take Drosophila to high schools. There was a program called Let's Talk Science, and I'd take all of these different mutant strains, and one of them was a heat-sensitive mutation that if you heated it up, their nervous system shut down. And so the kids would take these poor little vials, they're vials full of Drosophila, and the kids would take them. And I say, if you heat them up, they become paralyzed temporarily until they cool down. So the kids would hold the vial tightly in their hand and heat it up, and all the flies would just be what? And they'd fall to the bottom, and then they'd let go, and all the flies would run up the side again. And they just loved doing this. Drosophila is a very, very advanced it's a genetic model, a very advanced genetic model, which is how I sort of got into genetics. But there's a lot of care of Drosophila. You have to make food for them. You have to flip stalks into new vials of food, and you have to clean a lot of stuff, like working with a live animal. So that was my job when I first started. I was going in there, I was making fly food.
Very glamorous.
Yeah. But it got me into, like, I started to learn about the flies. I got to know the professor. And he actually wrote one of the references for me for vet school. And then when I didn't get in, I approached him. I told him that I hadn't gotten in. And I said, but you know what? I'm really liking what I'm doing here. And, you know, I want to continue this. And, you know, if you'd be interested in having me as like a master's student, I would love to come and do a master's. And then, so, because we'd had that opportunity to form that personal relationship, he said, yeah, I think you would be good at it. And so that's sort of how I ended up going into grad studies, was just going into that lab and working. And then he was like, okay, well, let's do this. And then I came on as a master's student.
Let's do this. Yeah. All right, it's on.
Yeah. So I joined as a master's student. And then 1 year into the master's program, I said to him, can I do the test to transfer from the master's to the PhD? And he said, well, I think you can do a PhD, so let's do it again. Yeah. So, because I find that for me, at least, and I've been working on like the interview style communication, but it was more difficult for me, and I had to show what I was able to do as opposed to being able to talk my way through something. I had to more be like, yeah, I'm gonna really botch this conversation, but if you let me show you what I'm capable of, then you're like, oh, okay, you're actually pretty good at this. And so, but then it was like in grad school, it's like you have to work on communication.
Yeah. You can't just do that your whole way through.
Yeah, you have to teach, you have to TA, you have to teach undergrad courses like the labs, you have to give presentations, you have to pass a verbal exam every year, like going through all of your materials. So there was a lot of working on like public speaking and stuff like that, and it's helped me a lot along the way. How
did you prepare for that? Was it just practice, or were there any other exercises that you did, or did you work with any coaches?
I didn't work with any. I think my PhD supervisor was sort of my coach, because I kind of started with, I would have everything written down that I wanted to say, and I'd have my notes with me. And then one day he said to me, he was like, Sarah, no more notes. Put away your notes and just talk. And I was like, okay. So then I was like, but he's a very wise person. So I was like, okay, I'll try it. So then the next time I was so nervous, and I just like put away all of my notes, and I was like, I can do this. I can do this. I could do this. It was nice to have someone who kind of believed in me that I could do it. Yeah. And then I tried it. And since then I really kind of haven't gone back to having notes. And I feel like it's hard, but it's also easier because you're not trying to memorize a script. You're just trying to talk. But then it's also hard because you're trying to hit all of the points, and you're trying to make sure you don't sound silly, or, you know, do something that's like completely off topic or anything like that. But it was good. It was good for him to say that to me. He was just like, no more notes. Put them away.
No, it's really critical to have that person in your development or your sphere to be like, okay, this is a crutch. You need to stop what you're doing for you to be able to ultimately grow and jump off and do better. And I have to say, I'm really impressed by, even though you had this almost crippling fear of speaking in an interview setting, it's not like it impacted the way you interacted with authority. So you still asked for opportunities. And I think that's a piece that a lot of people struggle with. Because we think, oh, we're not good enough, or, oh, this person got this opportunity, so therefore I'm out and I can't be part of this too. So that's really admirable.
Yeah. I always found this about, like, there's doors that are open and there's doors that are shut. And, like, you know, sometimes the door shuts in your face. Like, for example, like the veterinary college is shut in my face, and I kind of understand why. But it's like, you just gotta keep looking for that open door, and some of them open and some of them don't, and you just kind of, you know, if you don't give up, you keep kind of navigating and trying to figure out a path, and eventually, you know, one of them hopefully will open for you, and you just go through. It's hard though to keep taking rejection, right? You have to get like a thick skin because I think that's part of the reason why people don't ask for something, is because of that fear of like rejection or being told that you're not good enough. And in grad studies, people like to do that a lot to you.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
They tell you that you're not good enough all the time. And so you get a thick skin doing that as well. So you need to, you develop that thick skin and you try to navigate around it. It's a lot of working your way through and, trying to be resilient.
Yeah, I can only imagine. And I mean, I'm not sure if my experience was any similar to yours. Well, I studied science in university, not anywhere to the degree that you did, but I did get a sense that it was a bit imbalanced gender-wise. So it was generally a little bit more male dominant. Did you find that was at all the same for you in your classes or in labs?
I feel like, so in my lab, we had 3 PhD students all going through at the same time, and 2 were women, me and another woman, and there was 1 man.
Oh, that's great.
And in the classes that I taught, I felt like there was women, at least they're coming up, right? Maybe they're like, when you get higher up into like professors, like there's a lot more, there seems to be a lot more male professors, right? But there's a lot more women who are coming up. They're younger, they're working their way through, like we're starting to even that out a little bit. And I think it's going to take time. But I think that as new professors are coming in and they're getting hired, it's going to start to switch over a little bit, and you're going to start to see more women who are in those roles. And the thing about like women professors, at least when I was there, is if you can imagine, they had to be tough to get to where they are. Yeah. So those women professors were tough. And I thought to myself, I want to have like a female role model on my committee or whatever. And my supervisor was kind of like, are you sure? Because they're tough women who've got to these positions right now, like to fight through everything to get there. And they're going to be really tough on you. And he was like, I don't know if you want someone who's tough. And I was like, well, I don't know. Maybe it's good. Maybe it's not.
Yes.
But I remember there was one very nice female professor that she was kind of friends with my supervisor, and so she was an important influence too on being like, okay, this is what I can do, a kind of a role model for me. That she's very smart. She's high up in her position. She actually got a grant to send like her experiment up into space to see like the results. Like it was really kind of cool, like some neat stuff that she was doing. So it's always nice to watch somebody who's very successful and a role model for you and be like, this is what I can sort of aspire to. So it was nice to have her as a kind of an influence as well going through.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Was she hard on you?
No, actually, she was pretty nice lady. Yeah.
That's hilarious. Maybe she was just hard on the dudes and not.
Yeah.
That's incredible. What advice would you give to any women who are looking to come up in science, or any women who have an interest in science?
Do it. If you
just do it. Do it.
No, if it's something that you're interested in, follow what you're interested in, and don't worry about like what anybody else thinks is right or wrong, or what they think you should be doing. A lot of people have opinions about things, and you have to sort of trust your own instincts, because it's your life, and it's, you have to do what makes you feel good about yourself, not what somebody else thinks will make you feel good about yourself. And so if you're interested in science, pursue it, go through it. You're gonna hit setbacks. You're gonna get knocked down. You're gonna have people that sort of are really not very nice to you. And for me, it was sort of about surrounding myself with positive people and trying to not let the negative people have an impact on me. Kind of like, okay, well, maybe I have to deal with you, but I'm not gonna like let what you say, impact what I do. Mm-hmm. It's about trying to like remove the negativity and keep the positivity, because it's hard enough as it is already. You don't need somebody like hanging on to you, telling you that you can't do something or you're not good enough, or you just want those people around you who are like, yeah, I think you can do it. You should try it. Even if you fail, it's okay. Mm-hmm. You try it anyways. And then if you fail, you get up, you try something else, or you try it again. Like, it's not being scared to fail and just just being brave enough to try,
Mm-hmm.
I guess.
That's great advice.
Yeah, that's my own personal experience.
No, that's wonderful. I got teased a lot for being in science, even in high school. I took the 6-pack, like I took all the maths and sciences, and I got teased a lot. So,
oh, really?
Yeah, I know. No, it's fine. I'm over it, hopefully. But it's really great advice to just keep on course, keep focused, don't let anything negative bring you down.
Yeah. It's hard though to not let something negative bring you down. Sometimes you have to I got an email once from someone who wasn't even a professor. He was like an administrator, and he had sent me an email. For some reason, he felt inclined to like write 3 paragraphs, well structured, about why he thought I wasn't good enough.
What? He took the time to write that. Wow.
It's a long story why it was written, but I didn't think it was necessary. But he was trying to explain why something had happened, and the reason that he was trying to explain was he was trying to say I wasn't good enough for it. And then that was a rough email to read. And I just walked out of the lab. I went and I got myself a coffee. I went and sat somewhere by myself for a little while, and then I just kind of like, I didn't reply to the email. I deleted the email, and I was like, I can't. And when my supervisor came, I was like, that was like an unnecessarily harsh email. And he kind of agreed with me. And so it was like, at least I felt like someone agreed with me that.
Yeah, you felt validated.
Yeah, I felt validated that was unnecessarily harsh.
Yeah.
So it's hard. It's hard. It takes some time. It can. And I'm not going to lie that I haven't sat and cried over stuff, because it sometimes it just like really gets to you, and you just have to, you let it out, because if you got this thing that's happened, you let it out, and then you try to recover from it, and you try to bounce back and be like, okay, I've felt how I felt. That wasn't very nice. And now I'm going to move on from it.
Yeah. And ultimately, sometimes when those things are expressed to us, whether it's in an email or it's a comment or anything like that, it's typically a reflection of that person, of something they're either dealing with in the moment, or an insecurity or blind spot that they are in denial about or don't know they even have.
Right.
And that's something that I know now as an adult, but years ago, 10 years ago even, I might not have the awareness to even think about that. So
right. I don't think I even knew that. So that's good to know.
It's true. No, it is. It's so true. Oh my goodness. Yeah, there was so I partner very closely with colleagues who are in sales, and I get to partner with a lot of wonderful women. And one conversation I had with my sales colleague, she was getting berated by this new client partner who was actually just downright being almost verbally abusive. And this was a call that we recorded. Her manager listened to it. She's like, oh my gosh, I do not feel okay with that. And we actually took steps after it. Because it was just not cool. And what happened is this guy who was on the call, who was the client who'd done a lot for, had a great partnership up until that point. He was going through a divorce, and he was having a really bad day. Still doesn't excuse him from acting like a jerk, but still, you never know.
Yeah, there's something going on in their own life.
Yeah.
That's good to be aware of.
Yeah.
I'd say there must be something going on.
We're perfectly imperfect as we are.
Yes, that's true.
All right, let's move forward to question 2, which is, what's your proudest accomplishment?
So, I mean, proudest accomplishment. I think that something that I'm really proud of is that I have my grade 8 piano.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
And that took a lot of work. I was in piano for years and taking exams, and I actually took the grade 8 Royal Conservatory exam and passed that, and got my grade 8 piano. So that's like an accomplishment for me.
That's cool. When did you start playing piano?
When I was young, I think, I can't even remember, maybe like grade 1 or 2, I started playing piano, and it was, you have to take, like, it's not just like the playing part, but there's the theory and there's the written part. And so I finished all of that. And that was it's something that I'm still quite proud of, to say that I passed my grade 8 piano exam.
Oh, wow. Well, I grew up playing violin, and I did not stick it out that far. In fact, I loved the playing. I did not like the theory and all the other elements myself. So that's a huge accomplishment. Yeah. Wow. Do you still play?
I do, but I play more for enjoyment. I just kind of like, because
you should.
Yeah. We've got a piano is one thing that I said to my husband. I was like, the house doesn't feel right without a piano in it. Like I feel that's something that makes a house, and that's just for me. So he actually bought me like a electric piano for Christmas, like a full size one. But it sounds like it's got a nice sound to it, like a real piano. But I mean, I try to play, but we've got 2 kids, and the second you start playing, they're on the seat beside you, and they're like hitting the keys,
finger bashing. Yeah. So Mommy, it's music. And you're like,
So most of the time I'm just like, I just play with them, and I'm trying to teach them a little bit about piano. And I play things like, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star on the piano. Right. Like I'm not playing anything.
Classic hits. Yeah.
But that's a big thing for me to do that. I know you might like say, well, getting a PhD is a big accomplishment, and it is a big accomplishment, but I feel like it's also, it's just the start. You get it. And then it's like, okay, well, now what do you do with it? So I feel like it's sort of an ongoing thing. You feel really good on the day that you get your PhD, but then it's like, okay, now I have to actually make it worth my while and actually use it. So I still, even though it's been almost 10 years, I still feel like, okay, I need to, make good use of this. So it's an ongoing sort of attempt to make it a proudest accomplishment, I guess.
Well, I mean, it seems like you're well on your way to doing that.
I'm trying.
Yeah. Well, it seems like you've been involved in some commercial ventures and using your PhD. Can you tell us a little bit about your company or companies? It seems like you have a couple of ventures you're involved in.
So Instant Chemistry. So Instant Chemistry is actually, it offers a test for couples who are in romantic relationships to give them insight into sort of how their relationship ticks and strengths and weaknesses to help them make the relationship stronger. And it's a genetic test. So it's based on academic research looking at genes that affect personality and affect relationships. So it comes with it's a 27-page report, and it goes through each person's individual results, and then it goes through what it means for them as a couple. So the test has a few different components. It has the biological compatibility component, which is like a sexual attraction component. And so these are looking at genes of, it's okay, I'll explain it a little bit. They look at genes of our immune system, and these genes are very diverse from person to person. And the more different these genes are between two people, the more likely they are to have a physical attraction.
Really?
Yeah. So this was...
Is that truly like the opposites attract type of mentality, or...
Well, I guess, a lot of people say it's the opposites attract sort of mentality, but it's based on actually smell. So...
What? Go on.
So it was studied, first identified in humans back in 1995, and it's called the sweaty t-shirt study. And so what this study was they asked men to wear shirts without any like cologne or deodorant for a few days and sleep in the shirts. And then they took the shirts off and they gave them to women to smell. And the women have never met any of the men before. And they had to rank the most attractive to the least attractive based on smell alone on these shirts. So they smelled them and they ranked them. And then they looked to identify, is there a genetic component to this? And what they found was that these genes of our immune system were contributing to that, sense of this person smells attractive to me. And so the idea behind it is that if you have two people with very different immune systems and they come together and have a child, that child is now getting a more diverse immune system from mom and from dad, as opposed to similar genes from mom and dad. And they have a greater, it's called the heterozygote advantage, but they have a greater ability to defend themselves against pathogens or diseases because they've got this more diverse set of genes in their immune system. So that's sort of the physical attraction. And so when these, genes make proteins and the proteins break down, they're excreted from our body and they contribute to our body odor. So This is like a body odor without like cologne or deodorant or anything like that. It's that like, oh, that person just smells good to me, right? And that's part of that is the genes of, it's called the HLA genes.
And is the smell different than, say, like a BO smell? Like if that person is sweaty, is it like a different part of the body type smell?
Well, it's kind of would be related to BO, like it's
like underarm smell.
It's your body.
That's the specific part.
I mean, some people, they will smell very good to you, and other people you're like, oh, like that person just smells really bad to me. Yeah. And part of that is these genes. And so more importantly, in women, they have reported that body odor is just as important, if not more important, than physical appearance in their attraction to someone. So they're going to be like, oh, I don't want to be close to this person because they smell really bad.
Yeah, it's like the transit system in the summertime. It's like just a big experiment in itself, really. Yeah.
It's like if somebody's like away and you smell a shirt and it reminds you of that person, you're like, oh, they're not here, but this like is bringing back all of the memories of that person being around me. Mm-hmm. That's the biological compatibility component. So that's part of the test. And then there is the neurocompatibility component, which we look at genes that affect behavior. So we look at genes related to empathy. We look at genes related to stress, risk-taking, and how they affect relationships. So just for an example, we look at a gene called the serotonin transporter, and it's involved in moving serotonin from like outside of a cell to an inside of the cell. And there's different versions of this gene, and so excitingly they're called the long and the short version, because one gene is actually physically longer than the other one because there's been a deletion of part of the DNA, and it's made it the gene is actually shorter.
At least they kept it simple. Yeah. I didn't try to overscience it.
Yeah. So if you have the long version, it's pretty effective at moving serotonin around from outside the cell to inside the cell. If you have the short version, it's not as effective. And what they found in people is that if you have the short version, you're more likely to experience emotions more strongly. So if something negative happens, you experience it very negatively. But if something good happens, you experience it very strongly. Like, so if you have the long version, if something good happens, maybe you're like, yeah, that's great. But if you're the short person, you're like, wow, this is like you have a better experience, right? You feel better about it. But then the opposite happens when it's a bad experience. It's harder for you.
You're a hot mess.
Yeah, it's harder for you to struggle out of that. And there's a 13-year research study looking at married couples and marital satisfaction in relation to the serotonin transporter. And what they found was that if both partners have the short version, that their marital satisfaction decreases over 13 years.
Really?
Because they, when things happen, they both respond very strongly to it. And if it's like a negative thing that happens, like maybe there's like a death or something in the family, they are very emotionally strong about it, and it can lead to negativity in their relationship, and they kind of taking it out on each other, or they're not there to support each other because they're having their own emotions. And over time, the negative starts to outweigh the positive. So maybe they have like, really good experiences too, and they're both very, very happy. But over time, they find that the negative one has more of an impact on their relationship. So that would be an example of one of the genes we test for. So we have a clinical psychologist in the States who works with us, and he's been working with married couples for 30 years. And he provides some insight into, okay, well, I can say from my aspect, I can say you've got these genes. And then from his aspect, he can say, based on what we know about it, here's ways that maybe you can handle it. Right. It's not about saying,
I was going to say, like, what happens if this test comes back and, you and your partner, you're just opposites in a bad way, or you're not the most compatible based on this DNA test.
Right. So the DNA test looks at a lot of different genes. And so the test isn't really about saying, oh, you guys are not compatible together. It's about saying, like, here's an area maybe you need to work on in your relationship, and here's an area that you're really good at in your relationship. We don't really, because there's so many different aspects, it's not usually like, oh, all of them are negative. And
you just get a piece of paper back saying, like, just end it already. Destined to fail. It's just a sad trombone noise, like wah wah.
No, because we don't know the people. We're not out there to say who you should be in a relationship and who you're not, you shouldn't be in a relationship with. We're here to kind of like, help you strengthen your relationship, learn about your partner, and the feedback that we get is that it makes people feel closer to each other, and it makes people have more of an understanding about where the other person is coming from. They're like, why are they acting like that? Oh, they have more of even a genetic predisposition to be acting that strongly in their emotions, or they have a predisposition to struggle more with empathy, right? And so the feedback is kind of more like, I would say if genetics were like the be all and end all, that this test wouldn't be very helpful. But because there is the nature and the nurture,
I was going to ask about that. Yeah.
It allows you to take what you've learned about your genetic predisposition and say, okay, be able to step back and say, okay, maybe I'm reacting like this because I have this predisposition pulling me this way, but maybe there's a better way for me to handle this situation. Like it's kind of sort of rising above like maybe how your predisposition is pulling you and saying, okay, let's try and work this out in a different way. Or let's, maybe instead of saying to my husband, you can't read my emotions, you can't tell I'm upset right now, saying, I know that like it may be harder for you to be able to interpret what I'm feeling without me saying it. So I'm going to say to you what I'm feeling. I'm going to tell you what I'm feeling, as opposed to being like, how come he doesn't understand me? And it's that he has the genetic variant that would make it harder for him to experience empathy. So it's about like sort of having that understanding about that person, being like, well, I'm really good at empathy. He should be just as good as I am. I don't understand. I can tell what he's feeling. How come does he not care what I'm feeling? And it's not about him not caring about what I'm feeling. It's that he doesn't necessarily pick up on it as easily. And it's like you learn from that test and say, okay, well, maybe I need to tell him what I'm feeling. And it's not that he doesn't care. It's just that he needs more help in that situation.
Yeah. I mean, you said it very delicately and very well. I feel like there's a lot of situations where that could really blow up. You're like, I know you're not so great at reading my emotions, so now I'm going to tell you more. But how much of this becomes almost a self-fulfilling prophecy, saying, you're not good at reading emotions, and so therefore they'll be like, oh, I guess I'm not very good at reading emotions. How much is that nurture versus nature?
I mean, we do have people who have actually emailed back and said, like, I don't feel like this is me. I feel like it's very different than I am, because they're like, so for example, the oxytocin transporter that we look at, or the receptor that we look at, is it's highly influenced by environment. So maybe you have the one that's like less able to interpret empathy, but you've been in a very, very empathetic environment. And so you're raised and you have like a strong ability to like interpret someone else. And we've had someone who was they were very shocked at the result, and they were like, it's really, I don't feel like that at all. And so there is definitely that component. I don't think that people necessarily make it a self-fulfilling prophecy, as opposed to it's sort of they find it to be, they either like say, okay, yeah, that's me, or they say, no, I don't think that that's me, and no, that's just not me.
Like it's like an opportunity for reflection, more than anything. Because hold on, I don't know what I'm trying to say here. That's okay. No. It's challenging. It's challenging. I mean, this is a very long debate, and we don't need to get into the depths of nature versus nurture, but it's very interesting because you read a lot. We read a lot. The power of now and being able to manifest your desires and wants and things like that. So there's a lot of people who feel very strongly that, regardless of who they are, where they come from, their genetic disposition, they can achieve and do anything. But at the end of the day, science is science, and science is science for a reason. So there is an acknowledgement that has to be had there. What would you say the percentage, rough percentage of people who come back and say, yes, this is spot on, is, like, qualitatively?
A percentage. We don't actually hear back from a lot of people. They take the test and they take it and they read it, and
it's like a Yelp review. It's only if they have something like really, really great or really bad to say that.
We've had a comment that was like they took my saliva and it was like they knew everything about me, that was kind of a neat comment to have. It was because that person just felt like it was so spot on. And then we've had someone come, it's mostly related to specific genes when they come back and say that they don't feel like it's them. Like they come back and they say, oh, I don't feel like I'm passionate, or I don't feel like I'm I'm less empathetic or something. Like it's more when they come back for the negative one, it's more about a specific gene, and they will usually email and I will write them back. And I will kind of go through like some more information with them about it, like go into that particular gene more in depth to try and explain it to them. And just trying to say, like, no, we're not just a composite of like a few genes. This is what the literature says on it. But we are not just these genes. We've got many, many genes that make us up. And I'll send them some of the research as well so they can look into it. And yeah, they usually are satisfied with that as an answer that they feel like to themselves, okay, I'm not just this one gene.
Yeah,
and if this one gene doesn't explain me, then there's something wrong, right?
It's a lot of pressure on that one gene.
Yeah.
But yeah, I suppose it's looking at it holistically as opposed to just trying to pick it apart and land on that one piece. I mean, there's a lot of cultures around the world who do put a lot of effort and money and time and things like that into an outside source to define who they are, like horoscopes. I mean, there are cultures who live and breathe by horoscopes, and you know, some might say that's very scientific, but it's different. So it's an interesting conversation. Curious, where did the idea come from for this? Because you're the co-founder with your husband, right?
Yes.
Okay. Go on.
Well, actually, we both did our undergrad together in the same university, but I didn't meet him until the very end of undergrad. But we'd both taken this animal behavior course at the same time. We were in the same class. I didn't even know that he was in the class. Oh, well, that's okay. But the teacher had taught about the HLA, like the biological compatibility component in the class. And it's not just like restricted to humans. Like this is found in a lot of different species. They've found it, and like even fish, they've found it. And when I learned about it, I thought it was absolutely fascinating. And I'd kind of held on to it and in my head, and I was kind of like, you know, this is something that maybe could help people could use. Like there's so much research that is in the lab that never makes it out to anybody. And it's fascinating findings that nobody ever actually uses for anything.
Why is that?
I think academic researchers don't have a lot of know-how how to take it out to the public. Like they know how to do the research, they know how to publish it, but they don't know how to go kind of that step beyond and turn it into something that people can use. They're trained academically, but not business. So my husband has an MBA.
Okay, useful. Yeah.
Yeah. So he has a PhD and an MBA. Whatever I do, he has to do more. There's that competition there. So he kept on going with his school. But anyways, him having the MBA was good for understanding how to take something and turn it into a business. And so we decided, well, why don't we start this and try it? And I didn't know a lot about business, but I've been learning about business, like hands-on doing the stuff. But he was kind of like guiding that. And I was kind of like, I'm stronger in genetics than he is. His work was not in genetics. So I was kind of like, okay, well, I'll build up like the science side and you build up the business side. And then there's definitely some crossover. Like he knows how to do all of the techniques in the lab and I do some of the business stuff. And it's just been kind of growing since then. But yeah, I think that there's a big there's a gap between the researcher and knowing how to turn it into a useful product for people to use. And I have like Mars and stuff downtown, which have like big, facilities just to try and do that, to incubate and help them turn their research into products. So I think they're working on it. Like this called like bench to bedside and stuff like that right now.
Wow.
Like now it's a thing, but traditionally like a professor probably wouldn't know how to do that very well. So now they're trying to help and assist with that to take it out of academics and into the public.
That's awesome. So it sounds like working with incubators and those types of great programs and hooking up with a business student, definitely, definitely an advantage if you're an academic researcher. Very cool. And do you mind me asking, how compatible are both of you?
So we're one of the first people to take the test, obviously. We're always one of the first people when we do a new gene. We're always the first people to test ourselves.
Right.
We're average. we're just like most couples would be
Cool.
taking the test, the average couple. And I mean, like, you probably got from that he has the less empathetic version of the oxytocin receptor, and I have the more empathetic one.
And he can't be upset. He can't be upset about that when he listens to this. He'll be like, yes, it's true.
But it's kind of like now if we're like, we go into a situation that would be like, oh, we have to like handle this more delicately, or we need to finesse it. Ron's like, Sarah, you do it. It's like, you're better at reading a room than I am. But then there's a psychological assessment as part of the test as well. And he scored higher dominant on it than I did. And it always bothers me that he's higher dominant on this test than I am. But I always use it to be like, okay, well, you deal with that situation because you're the dominant one. I don't want to deal with it. So I like,
I was going to ask if you'd like overcompensate in certain situations. Like, I'm going to be more dominant even though it's not my disposition.
Yeah.
So where's the line between this and being able to make informed decisions and being able to collaborate better as a couple, and it becoming almost Black Mirror territory where you're like, I need to find my person who is the yin to my yang, you know what I mean? Like, how does this not progress into that?
Well, because everybody is so different and all of their genes are so different. I think that you could be looking for a long time. The chances of you finding someone that's like completely at exactly what would give you like the highest score is almost nothing. Like, even for the HLA, there's 40,000 different possible combinations. And it's just, I mean, it's showing you that most people are sort of like this as a couple. They're not, if you think that your relationship is not that good, well, maybe you take the test and you say, okay, we're just pretty much like every other couple in what we score.
Maybe it's just uncovering some of those blind spots that they haven't addressed yet.
Yeah. You'd have to find a lot of people to take the test with you, be willing to take the test with you to try and like find someone who's very, very high. But there's so much diversity that, I mean, even if you're looking for someone who is, matches you on the serotonin transporter, are you going to be able to find someone that matches on the oxytocin transporter as well? It's, I don't think that it's very useful use of time to try and do that.
Because what if you had, hypothetically, in a Black Mirror world, what if you had everyone who did this test and they registered their information to some form of app or something like that, like a Tinder, like some dating app of sorts, and then you could actually filter out people by some degree of information.
Right. Well, even if you did that, it doesn't make up an entire relationship. Right. Okay. The genetics is only one component of a relationship. Okay. So even if you did that, you're still got like the psychological component. You've still got other unidentified components. So it's not the be all and end all of the relationship. It's not going to be like a perfect thing, even if you were to do that.
Got it.
So yeah, it's only a small component of what's going on.
Okay. That's good to know. I know sometimes those types of shows, I'm just like, oh man, yeah. they blow it out. And you're like, this could possibly be a twisted reality, how many decades from now. That's cool. I had one more question before we go back to our regularly scheduled programming here. You're like, we're only on question 2. Bit curious, because I know there's been a little bit of controversy around genetic testing and who has access to this type of information that's being collected and where this information goes. I know there's been some news articles that have come out saying, the FBI has perused information from other genetic tests and things like that. Do you have any commentary around that?
I think that, so we don't share any genetic information with anybody. But I think that it has to be something that the individual would sign permission for. I think that, it has to be a private service, and if they're willing to share their information, that's fine. But I don't think that it's really right or fair to just take somebody's data and give it to somebody else to use. So it's a growing sort of area. It's something it's like anything that's new. We don't really know how to handle it at first, and it takes a while for kind of laws to get put into place and people to figure out what would be sort of the best thing. And until that happens, companies will do what they can, I guess, to make money or to try and help or whatever. And so we definitely need to have some regulation put into place about what's going to be done. And if the regulation is that, well, your data can be used or shared with the FBI, then that needs to be known by everybody who's taking the test, that could be something that happens. And I mean, it does get definitely more complicated because then you have people who have never taken it, but they have relatives who's taken it. And as a result, they're able to identify this person who has not taken it because they have so many relatives who they do have the DNA for. So it's complicated. It's complicated, and it definitely needs to be discussed and sorted out and some regulation put into place there with what's going to happen to it. But because it's in a sort of a new field, we're not there yet. So it's kind of a territory that we have to venture into and figure out still. But there's a lot of complications and complexities to think about for sure.
Right. So it sounds like it doesn't have much in the way of regulation, and it's up to private companies as to what they promise to the people who use their service.
Yeah, there's not a lot of government regulation over it right now because it is still
That's scary. That's weird. That seems scary to me. No, I don't know. You're like, here, have all of my genetic makeup and have fun with it. Like for the companies who do decide to share it, or they don't explicitly say, hey, we hold this confidentially. Oh, sticky. Good to hear that your company is not like that.
Yeah, no, we don't do
that. That's great. Good news. All right. Well, on that note, let's flip back to question 3, which is, how do you balance work and life? I feel like this is a big one. I know you're a mom too.
Yeah. I would say there's not a lot of balance. It's about getting everything done. I mean, it's about sort of, we don't go out very much. We don't have a lot of like side activities. It's very focused on what has to get done during a day. And it's focused on like, okay, I got to finish this because I have to leave by this time. I can't stay here till so-and-so hours because I have to go get my kids, or I got to go home to my kids. And so you become very focused, you become very efficient. But you try your best. Like sometimes, like maybe you get a phone call and I have to go get my son from school or something midday. And then it's like, well, and then I got to leave work. Well, then after he's sleeping, I'm working at night kind of thing. Right. There's like, it's about trying to get everything done. And there was like, a little while ago, there's like one day I was like up at 6 a.m. and I was getting the kids ready. And then I was here and I was work. And then I was home and I was cooking dinner. And then the night just seemed to get away from me. And I looked at the clock and it was like 11:40 p.m. And I was like, I hadn't stopped moving yet. And I was just like, oh, okay. I need to stop because day has been going on for way too long. And it's just like you making lunch for the next day for your kids, baths, dinner, bedtime, getting emails sent out that you didn't get sent out. And it's just like a constant, like constantly going. It's constantly going.
It sounds like a live Tetris game. You know what I mean? You're just like, oh, this thing is coming down. And then, oh no, these 3 blocks just bumped everything up towards the ceiling. And how do I rejig everything? Yeah. And I mean, we do a lot of trying to like remove as many of those Tetris blocks as we can. So we're only trying to manipulate a few of them. Which can be hard because, like, you know, if you used to see your friends like every weekend or something, maybe you see them like a couple of times a year now or like once a year, but you try to keep in touch with them like on your phone or something like that. Like you don't see them as often. And it's like, well, when was the last time you saw a movie? Well, we saw a movie like last year, you know. Like, I mean, I don't have kids and I'm not I would say an entrepreneur, quote unquote, because I don't actually have a business. And I feel like I empathize with a lot of things that you're saying myself. How do you take time for you? How do you allow yourself to not just get totally stretched out and burnt?
It's kind of like
it's like that uneasy laughter. Like, you mean I can do that?
No. If I get really to the point, like it's kind of like in a way, I have to be forced to do it. I don't do it by choice so much as like, okay, I need to take a break. And it will be kind of like, okay, Ron, I need you to watch the kids for like an hour, and I need to like go and take a break. And like you try to use like opportunities in your day that you already have to like take your break, like taking a shower, like take a bit of a longer shower, because that's a chance for you to be by yourself and in your own thoughts, kind of thing. But there's not a lot of opportunity to do that. It's kind of like you take short little breaks, maybe at lunchtime or whatever, or if you really need to, even like maybe you ask the grandparents to look after the kids for like a day or an afternoon, so you can spend some time either by yourself or like me with my husband or something, like just going out. If you really need it, you need to have, it's good to have a support system where someone can look after the kids for you, or you take like a lunch break, you go somewhere, like go to a park or something like that to like unwind. Like that would be something for me. I don't know if that's everybody's thing, but like going to nature and like, watching a stream or something would help me deal with like stress, like listening to the water run. That would be something I would do, but not everyone would do that.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. I mean, it sounds like you just take the time when you can have it. And when you can take it, worst case, you enlist your support network, and then just understand what calms you and what centers you, and do that when you have that time. Yeah,
I would say that that's a big part of it. Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know how she does it.
you
awesome.
Just do it. I didn't know how I would be able to have 2 kids, but it's kind of like you find the energy. I don't know. You find because they bring like so much joy to my life. I just like, I love going home to see them, and like they come running to the door and like, mommy's home. And like, and you just like, you get to give them
you're worth it.
Yeah, big hug. And they come up, and then when they're snuggling you, it's just like, oh, like you sit on the couch like at night to watch like a kid's show or something before bed, and they're jumping on the couch and they're curling up with you. And it's just like, that makes you happy. Like it makes it so much more worthwhile at the end of the day. You feel happy at the end of the day. And like they are crazy. They're 2 boys, but they are also so much like, they bring so much joy that it's just like, it's absolutely worth having 2 of them, and all of the work that's involved is just, it's still worth it because they're just so wonderful.
That's a strong reminder. I think it's very easy, especially for someone who doesn't have kids, to just think about the idea of having kids and just feel tired just thinking about it. But when you're in it, it's there, it's very real, and you actually have those tangible payback moments. You know what I mean? Like those, it feeds your soul in a way that you probably don't have in any other capacity.
Yeah. And they also are good for like helping. I mean, they're good for helping keep you in check for not like just focusing on work all of the time, because you go home and they're awake. You cannot do work when they're awake. Like it's just impossible. You got to wait till they're sleeping if you want to do anything. But it keeps you, it's good, because then it also forces you to take a break from work. Like you're at the park or you're in the backyard or something like that with them for a little bit when you get home. And that helps. It helps take away some of the stress from work. You're stressed because you're like, oh, I need to do this, that, and the other, and I can't do it right now because they're awake. But then you're like, okay, well, I just take this break with them. They're little, have some time. I'm having fun. This can wait till a bit later. I'll do it after they're sleeping. And that's a lot of fun too, having that check, because you also get to live stuff that you can't when you don't have kids, right? You'd look weird like going to like a playground and like swinging on swings maybe.
I don't know. I mean, I'm totally that person that goes to the dog park without a dog and just sits there to look at dogs. Myself, probably not, but most people, yes.
No, I know, totally do that. There's a lot of people do that, but yeah, you get to live stuff that like live through childhood in a way again. Like they bring back like the excitement of Christmas time. Like my son was so excited for Christmas this year. Like it was just so much fun. Like as soon as the Christmas tree came out, he was just like, the Christmas tree, the Christmas tree, the Christmas tree. And he's just like running around, like just like bouncing off the walls. And it was so excited that the Christmas tree was coming. And you kind of lose that when you get older. You're kind of like, oh, the hustle and bustle of Christmas, put the tree up. Yeah, it's nice. But you don't have the same sort of experience that like a 4-year-old has when the Christmas tree comes out. Like it's just the excitement, the wonder, like you relive that, and it's nice to have that. So it's good.
That's actually a really interesting perspective of being able to see the world for, or experience events for the first time or through the eyes of a child.
Yeah.
It's actually, it's a tactic that I think a lot of therapists use, is picturing yourself out of body even as a child. So would you allow the child version of yourself to be treated in a particular manner, as an example? It's like, if that's not the case, then that's something that would inform your adult self. But I think just the joyful elements of being able to be reminded of how exciting things are is so important, even if you don't have kids. So it's cool that you're sort of forced to have that reminder in real time. But that's nice.
Great. Having kids is great. I love having kids.
+1 in the mom column. That's great. So funny because we've talked about parenting on several podcasts, and everyone has a very different opinion of it. So it's really nice to hear from someone who is so accomplished and who does so much and is so thrilled about the family that they've grown. That's awesome. All right, let's move forward to question 4, which is, can you tell us about a difficult moment in your life?
This is hard, and I kind of already brought it up, but it was when I did not get into the veterinary program. That was, I would say, a difficult moment in my life. I was very heartbroken when that happened. I mean, there's a lot of difficult moments in life. Like, you lose someone that you love. Like, even if your dog dies, that's a very difficult moment. Mm-hmm.
Is there anything in particular that's been particularly challenging for you?
This is a really tough question for me to think through. I would say I've been lucky enough not to have a very tragic moment that I can pull on and say this was absolutely, I would say touch wood for that it was just absolutely heartbreaking. So I have been lucky. I've had the difficult moments along the way that I think most people experience. But I don't feel like I've had something in particular that would be just something that had happened to me that was very tragic. So I was thinking about this question, and it was kind of hard for me to come up with an answer for that. That I don't feel like I stand out from most people in the struggles that they've had in their lives. And I mean, maybe most people have had that one moment that was very difficult above and beyond other moments. But yeah, like I said, I feel like I've been lucky enough to not have to go through that, at least not yet. Anyways.
Which is definitely a good thing for sure. And when you were describing your experience when you had the veterinary interview, it seems like you're very good at almost compartmentalizing, saying this happened, it sucked, but I'm going to take my moment and move on. And it doesn't seem like you let that drag you down. Would you say that that's how you deal with most of those even mini setbacks as you go through life?
I guess I would say so, that I would try to do that. Try to you have that in your moment, you deal with those emotions, you do what you need to do for when that's happening, and then it becomes part of you and you grow from it and move on, and it becomes it definitely helps you grow as a person. It creates who you are and affects what you do in the future, but try not to have it something that brings negativity into that. But,
have you always been like that, or was that something you learned?
I think it's something that I've learned along the way. I don't think I've always been like that.
I was gonna say, it's so cool, calm, collected, and measured. I'm wow, I'm so impressed.
I don't know about but yeah, I think it's just it's just a learning experience along the way, and deciding how to work through situations. You just have to. For me, anyways, that's how I had to try and deal with it to keep going.
Was it self-taught, just out of necessity, or did you learn it from a parent or a role model?
I mean, I think it's been both. I think it's self-taught, and I think it's also just talking to people who have been this happened. It's horrible. It's okay at the same time, and will recover from it. And then people like, it's having those positive people in your life who provide that sort of input to you that helps you grow and learn those skills to keep moving forward. It's not having someone that says, oh, that's horrible. How are you ever going to get out of this? It's going to ruin you for the rest of your life. It's going to affect you kind of thing. But have this person who's like, it's horrible.
I was going to say, you weren't raised in like a Jewish family. That's pretty, it's always, the sky is always falling. How will you ever recover from this? I'm like, sorry, go on.
But yeah, no, it's having that person that's kind of like, that helps you acknowledge what's happened and helps it, become part of you, but not bring you down, sort of thing. And you can use it in a positive sense to help you grow. I would say it's having those people around you. I think the people around you in your life are very, very important for how you are as a person. That's very, very important. You have that like one person that's just like wears you down and drags you down. It has such a huge impact on you. So the people are very important in your life.
Talk about that nurture element, really.
Yes, it's that nurture element.
I empathize. Thank you. That's a really inspiring reminder of how to deal with adversity, how to deal with setbacks, because that's life. You will be dealing with plenty of these in various worlds. So that's great. Thank you for that. All right. Question 5. Who or what inspires you the most?
So I was thinking about that question too, and there's two women actually that I know that I am kind of inspired by them. There was one, and she's still a friend of mine, but she was the other PhD student in my lab, and she has a medical condition that can become quite serious at times, like very serious for her. And I remember going through the PhD that like there would be a couple of times where she just disappeared, and it was because she ended up in hospital, and she would be in hospital for a few weeks at a time with this condition. And but the thing about it was like she just came back, and she was like, this is not going to take me out. This is not going to define who I am. And she came back, and she just kept working, and she finished her PhD. And then when she was done, she was just like, I'm not done yet. And now she has an MD, and she just like, she kept going, and now she has a family. And it's just incredible to like, it's very inspiring to watch her, because she has this very serious condition that really can, it can be life-threatening at times. And she's just like, it happens. It's part of her. But she acknowledges it, and it's definitely part of her. And if you know her, you know that part of her as well. But she's like, I'm not going to let it stop me. I'm not going to let it, tear me down or tell me what I can or can't do. And I acknowledge that sometimes it will make me have a setback, but it's just a setback, and I'm going to keep going. And not only is she like inspiring like this, she's brilliant. Like she has a PhD and MD. She's very smart. She's very pretty. She's very friendly. Like she's just like, she's an amazing person to watch, really. Like it really is. And then you're just like, it inspires you. And it's be like, if she can do that with that medical condition, then I should be able to do this, because I don't have that like affecting me. And I have like, I should be able to do this as well. And she's just so good at it. And it's just amazing to watch her doing this.
That must keep you humble when you're like, oh, I have a bit of a cold, or I'm feeling tired today. And you're like, oh, wait, the person I'm working with here, she's dealing with something that's way more difficult and killing it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yes. It does put things in perspective a lot when you interact with her. And she's just such a wonderful person too. And it's just, I'm still friends with her even like 10 years after finishing. And it's like, it's great. So she's somebody that I find to be very inspiring. And then when I was doing a fellowship after I graduated, there was a PhD student in that lab, and I was inspired by her as well, because she'd come from another country by herself to do this PhD. She was alone in Canada. And not only was she dealing with trying to do a PhD, she was dealing with a completely different culture. She was dealing with cultural pressures from her own country, from where she was. And
what country?
Abu Dhabi.
Oh, yeah. I'd imagine. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Woman in a lab? What is that? Oh.
Yeah. So, I mean, she was kind of inspiring to watch, because she handled everything with such maturity, from like her her personal life to her like her relationships with like her friends and like with like a romantic relationship and like her parents and her research. And it was just like she was so good at being able to balance stuff and be resilient and like just being here by herself and doing all of that and managing all of that. And it was very inspiring to watch her as well, going through her degree and managing all of that. So she was inspiring to me as well.
Wow, you gals are badasses. Seriously, when I think about all of the things that you have to balance and the resilience in general, I mean, even in the stories that you've been sharing, having to manage so much and operate at this very, very, very high degree, like that's not exactly a position where you can come in, check out, and have your eyes glaze over. Like you have to be very engaged. Yeah. That's hugely inspiring.
Yeah. To me, they're definitely all the way through. It was like inspired by them. I'm still inspired by them. Yeah.
That's good. Having positive role models is such an important thing.
Yes.
Including you. That's why you're here. Do people call you like Dr. Sara Seabrooke? Like, is that
nobody calls me doctor ever?
Okay, all right. So I won't start. I was thinking about that when I was preparing for the podcast. I'm like, do I have to call her doctor? No, is it disrespectful? Is it
Nobody calls me doctor.
Would you like people to?
No, I don't really care. No.
You're like, this would be weird.
Yeah,
that's funny. All righty, let's move on to question 6, which is, what is the most adventurous thing you have ever done? She's already turning red.
No, it's because one of the genes that we test for is actually like risk taking and adventure seeking, and I don't actually carry it. I carry the non risk taking version, and I was like, I'm the most boring.
You don't have
person.
It at all.
I don't have it. I'm the most boring person in the entire world. Like I was trying to think of it. I was talking with them yesterday at lunch, like people here, and I was like, if somebody asked you what adventurous thing you've done, what would you say? And like, there's some people who are like, oh, I traveled by myself, and I was just like, I haven't even done that. I've traveled with my husband. Or like, I was like, I've gone dog sledding.
That's cool.
I was like, I don't know if that's adventurous or not. I've gone dog sledding.
Where was that?
In Huntsville, Ontario.
That's cool. I've never been on a dog sled. I feel like I'm so small and weigh like 2 pounds that it would not go very well for me. I feel like I would step on the sled and then it would just take
strong.
off without me.
The dogs are very strong. Yeah, it was hard to control the sled. I fell off once and the dogs like took off, and the people who were running the show had to like actually, as the dog sled was passing them, they had to jump from their dog sled to mine and then put on the brakes. Because the dogs were just like gone, and I was
that's pretty funny.
Yeah, I was like lying in the snow like, oh. So yeah,
that's pretty adventurous.
Very strong. I've done a hike through a rainforest.
Wow.
Which was kind of, but I was with like a group of people. It wasn't just me, but we kind of like, we walked along a river and we went through a rainforest, which that was kind of neat.
And that was where?
That was in St. Lucia.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah. So
I'd love to go.
That was okay.
It was so. It was mediocre.
Well, I don't know if it's an adventure or not, because I didn't really feel like my life was at stake or anything like that.
I mean, adventurous means what it means to you. It doesn't need to be you jumping out of an airplane or doing something solo. It's something that pushes your own comfort zone, your own boundary. So regardless of whether you have the genetic disposition to be super risk taker or not, for you, what might be adventurous might not be the definition of adventurous to the next person. So I think both of those things are adventurous, but is there anything else that comes to mind?
I mean, the only other thing I can think of is that on my bucket list was to climb the CN Tower, which I've done now. I did that a couple of times.
Oh, cool.
Climbed up the CN Tower stairs, which was,
And for our listeners who don't live in Toronto, so the CN Tower is the really, really large pointy tower that you see on the Toronto skyline. So it's very, very tall. How many flights of stairs or stairs do you happen to know?
Oh, I don't remember off the top of my head. It took like, I think the first time we went, it took us 40 minutes to go up the stairs.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Was it just walking?
Just walking. Yeah. Okay, you walk the entire time up the stairs. There was
Wow.
people who I didn't realize like the center of the CN Tower is kind of hollow, and there's like doors, like little windows inside the staircase, which they can take people out and like lower them down if they're not making it all the way up. So I saw one guy like had to get taken out and like lowered down the center of the tower because it's a long hike up that tower. But you have to do a little bit of training for it, I would say, to get up there. But so that was on my bucket list of adventurous things to do.
That's great. Well, is there anything else you're looking forward to or anything that you would like to do that you haven't checked off the bucket list yet?
I mean, I'd like to, there's a few places I want to travel to. I actually want to travel to Antarctica. That's sort of an adventure that I want to do. I want to go and see the glaciers in Antarctica. Maybe I won't actually get to land on the ice, but like taking like a cruise or something that goes close enough that you can see all those glaciers. That's something that I really want to do at one point, is go to Antarctica. So
that's so cool.
And I'm not like Argentina, Antarctica. I mean like Antarctica,
like actual like penguin Antarctica. I don't know if penguins are actually there.
There's penguins in Argentina too, but
oh really?
Yeah, the very south.
Learn something new.
But like actually, like go and see those ice shelves,
frosty.
Like, looking up and seeing like the big ice shelves. That's something I'd want to do eventually one day. Yeah,
you definitely should. There's that like ecology.
Yeah, exactly. There's
coming
the ecology.
in.
I want to go to the Galapagos Islands. That's sort of like an ecology thing too. It's full of endemic species there, and just see all of the different animals, because you're not really allowed on the islands, from what I understand. You're allowed to get off the boat, but there's nobody who lives, like they don't have like hotels or anything, right? So the animals don't really have that fear of people, from what I understand. So you get off and like all the animals are kind of like wandering around to you. They're close to you. So I want to go there because that's where like Darwin went, right? That's where evolution, he kind of like discovered evolution in the Galapagos Islands. So I'd love to go there. And then Australia, I want to go to Australia. I haven't been there. I know a lot of people have traveled to Australia, but I haven't yet. But I do want to go.
Neither have I. No, those are all really cool places. Yeah, I've been to a couple islands that are sort of like that. People don't really live there, or not many people live there, and it's one of those things where tourists can go and take a look around. But yeah, the species of animals and reptiles and things that live there, they are not afraid of people. I went to Iguana Island in Cuba, and let's just say I walked away with a couple of iguana bites. They're like, oh, you can feed the iguana. And I'm like, no, I'm good. And it just like decided to eat my hand. And it was great.
Okay.
It's great. Yeah. I was like, that's not what I came here for, but so that's the warning. If you go to Iguana Island, be careful.
Good to know. I'll keep an eye out.
Right? Awesome. Well, I do hope you get to check those off your bucket list.
I would love to. Yeah. One day.
Very cool. All righty. Question 7 is, what do you attribute your success to?
My success too would be, again, I would say the people around me. So important, the people around you, giving you support, giving you feedback, encouraging you, saying that you can do this, that's like the main thing, is the people around you. You have to have like, a bit of a drive, and you have to kind of work on that resiliency. Like you have to work on it, but you've got these people who are, encouraging you to work on it. And then you're okay, I can do this. Okay, I can do this. They're helping me. They say I can do this. The people. Yeah. Yep. It's so important. People are so important. If you don't have someone that you can fall back on, and someone who's going to help prop you up again, it's so much harder to do something. You got to have that. You got to have like that, that rock, that person who will help you, who will like just tell you, get up, keep going. You can do it. So yeah, the people in my life are very important.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And I have to say, it's very, very cool that you work with your husband. You have a business together. I could imagine that there's some people listening to this who would cringe at the very idea of it. Like, for some people, work is a place where, I don't say they escape their partner, but they have space from their partner. I would personally love to work with my partner more closely. But what has it been like doing this together? You mentioned before, like, you guys complement each other a bit, but
yeah. For the most part, there's definitely times where you start to get into arguments over the company, but for most of the time, like, you really have someone who you can really talk to, who really understands you, who really understands the company, and can really, give something that's useful to the conversation, to you and to the conversation. And it's someone that you can fall back on as well. I don't mind. I mean, I've worked with them in the past. Like we've done PhDs in the same, masters in the same university. We've worked out of the same building a couple of times. So it's not really something that was completely
not super new.
Yeah, super new or super different to me. I guess we just have a way of sort of, we give each other space. Like we're not like just always on top of like, oh, you're getting in my way. Like we try not to do that sort of bickering, like sort of be respectful of each other's space and try to bring like just like useful stuff to the conversation. I mean, it doesn't always work. Like he's your husband. You're like, you can be like, oh, you're doing this again. I can't believe you're doing this again. Like it definitely goes down that road. But it's trying to like, you try not to let that take over. And I mean, it's there's mutual respect there, and it's about like, you respect each other and you want each other to do well and you want the company to do well. And that's what you focus on, is that. So it's not, I never really found it to be like a huge issue, maybe because we do give each other the space, but and not try to like overwhelm each other with stuff.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's really good advice.
Yeah.
Oh man.
I guess.
Look at you. You're so functional together. That's great. That's amazing.
It's just the average couple based on these chemistry tests.
No, but that's great. It's really important to be able to know what that other person needs in the moment. And although things can get heated, you just ultimately give each other the space that you need to be able to focus on that core goal of helping the company succeed.
Yeah.
It's great. I have another question.
Yeah.
What advancements do you see in the future of genetic testing, or what things in the future for genetics are exciting you?
So I think a lot of it, there's still a lot that we don't know about genes and the genome, and learning about that, learning about like the regulation and like, epigenetics and all that kind of stuff is like an area that's growing, and it's very interesting. And I think there's going to be some stuff there, but it's kind of like, well, maybe you have this gene, but it's been shut off. And so it's not, you don't have like the disease that you would have if it was on, kind of thing. And like, how do you shut that off? How do you do that? And like, is it possible to, there's that gene editing with CRISPR, like, is it possible to use that to, cure somebody with like an illness or something like that? Like the future of like genetics and editing and just understanding what all the genes do and understanding how they work together. Like there's a lot that we don't know about them. And what we do know, like it's such a small snippet, what we do know about the genes. And so it's just a huge area of studying and learning about them. I think that, I mean, gene editing, I think is a really big one that's coming up, and it's going to be something really interesting to watch and learn with CRISPR. It's like the exciting thing,
gene editing. What is that? So
CRISPR has the ability to go in and snip out a segment of a gene and put in a different segment of a gene,
like in an actual person, or is this in a?
Yeah. So it would be in an animal. It would be in a cell. It would be in an embryo. There was that study that came out from China about a scientist who had edited two embryos, like twins, and one of them had the homozygote, so both of the copies of the gene had been edited, and the other one was like a heterozygote, only one of the copies of the gene was edited, and these embryos turned in like their children, right? They're babies now. So there's like a whole ethical thing about that, and was it actually real, and what does it mean they're now genetically modified children if they are real, and there's a huge ethical thing around that, like what was done and was it actually done, like do they have like the evidence and the proof of it. So yes, gene editing can be done in humans. It's something that's it's coming. People are working on it. But the question is like, can you actually edit an adult? Like, because you're made up of like so many cells, right? Like I think that they found that even if you try to, it's like someone who's like, say they have terminal cancer or something like that in their liver, and they go into like an experimental study or something like that, and you want to try and edit some of those cells in their liver, even if they put in like massive copies of CRISPR, you only get like maybe like 2% or something of the genes edited. Like it's a very small amount. And is that enough to actually help the person? And is there a way to increase that number and have more of them edited? And what are the impacts of editing? And what if there's off-target editing? So what if you edit in the liver, but then you also do some editing in the heart by accident or something like that? Like, you know, this is it has a huge potential, but there's a lot of things that have to be worked out as well. But that's interesting for me to watch that coming up.
Yeah, that is interesting. And I can only imagine that, the ethical side of it is definitely going to be front and center, especially when we think about designing babies as an example. You know, that's a whole podcast. That's a whole other podcast. Very cool. And so what is a chief science officer and how do you become one?
I mean, you're responsible for the science. You
I like that. You're responsible for the science.
Yeah. If stuff's not working, like if you know, if a protocol starts to fail or if something, you know, if you're developing a new protocol, like you've got to make sure things are running. Like it can get complicated and you're responsible for having everything going. So, you know, it kind of falls to you. If someone's got like a problem, they're like, you know, they come to you and you're like, okay, I got to try and fix this. I got to sort out what's going on. You know, and is it the probes? Is it the reagents? What's like, you know, where's problem? How do you interpret it? Like it's about like trying to explain to people what the science is. And that's been a big area, is trying to make genetics, at least from us, is trying to make genetics not something that sounds scary, but something that like people are interested in and they can read and understand what they're reading, as opposed to being like all this technical like garble about genetics that nobody understands. Is trying to write in a way that people can understand and learn from what they've read. So that's been a kind of a big component of it. There's the interpretation, dealing with like, you know, if you have a customer that has a problem, it just kind of falls on you as well, trying to explain science to them in a more in detail or an in-depth way, so they can take that home and like be able to interpret it and understand what has just happened, because they've just taken a genetic test and maybe they don't know anything about genetics. So being able to explain to them, because you don't want, with all of the genetics that's coming up and the genetic testing that's available, you don't want people to, there's a lot of opportunity for misunderstanding and misinterpretation, and trying to explain stuff to them in a way like, what does this actually mean? And, you know, what does it actually mean for you and what does it not mean, kind of thing. Like how far, like don't take this in this way or don't take this too far, because we can't interpret it that strongly in a lot of different ways. So spending a lot of time writing, trying to make it more accessible for people is a big component of it.
Got it. Yeah. And how do you get to be a chief science officer?
You have to be pretty nerdy.
Just put that on LinkedIn. You're like, I am nerdy.
It's just, I guess, just coming up and spending a lot of time focusing on your work, and just it's the same idea as like going through trying to do a PhD or trying to get what you want. It's handling rejection, trying another opportunity, another door, taking that rejection again, keep striving to be better, keep striving to do your best, and have a support group of people who are kind of supporting you. It follows kind of the same pattern, I guess, as like everything else. Trying to accomplish is have someone to bounce ideas off of, talk to them about it, show what you can do. Yeah.
It's such a cool title. I love it. Chief Science Officer. It just sounds so badass. So cool. All right. Let's start to wrap things up with question 8, which is, what item or items could you never live without?
Yeah. And initially I thought about like, well, I would it would be a much more difficult time to live without like a driver's license. That's not like an item, getting around from like one place to another, like just being able to freely do it without having to, you know, wait for like an Uber or like take a bus, or just being like, I can just do it now kind of thing and go where I want to or where I need to go.
That's such a unique answer. I haven't heard that one yet. It's funny because I only got my full driver's license over the past year, only because I'm born and raised in the city. So I usually walk or transit or every once in a while Uber. So it was really just out of a state of like, yeah, I guess I should have this more than anything.
Yeah, I know there's people definitely who don't have one, and living in downtown Toronto, I think it's easier to not have one. I mean, I feel like I need, like, if I need to go get my kids or something, I don't like the idea of like not being able to just do it.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like for me, or even like waiting for something, like for me, it's like, okay, I need to be able to just go and have that flexibility to just go.
Makes sense.
And then like another item's like a phone. Like, I don't know if other people say phone. These are like items, but these are like they're not like, I was trying to think about it. And again, it's kind of like connecting you to people, right? Your phone, you can't live without your phone, but why not? It's because it's just connecting you to people. Your car, why can't you live without your license? Well, it's because it's connecting me to people, right? So is it the car, is it the phone, or is it the needing that connection to people, right? Was that ultimately the item that you can't live without? Is it the people that these things connect you to?
You are a scientist, aren't you? I like that rationalization of the question. But it's true. You're totally right. That is true. But yes, for the sake of the question, we are looking at a thing. Yeah. So these are very valid answers.
Yeah, so those are the things that I came up with, but yeah.
I know it's true. We actually hear phone a lot on the interview, and it's true because for different people, the phone means different things. Same object, but means different things to them. So to some people, it's the music, it's the ability to consume content that's really meaningful. For you, it's people. So yeah. That's why we have the question. All right. Question 9. Is there anything you'd like to promote, either about yourself, your business, in general?
Well, I'd love to promote my business. It's great. Try it.
And how can people get one of these tests?
They would just go to instantchemistry.com and they can just order off the website, and they'll get a kit in the mail, and then they can send it back and we'll test them and send them their results.
Very cool. Oh, I love the name. Instant chemistry. It's so cute. And I didn't even realize that it's funny. When I reached out to you to be on the podcast, I didn't research your company first. I researched you. And then when I was doing research on you, obviously I was looking at your company and I'm like, this is even cooler than what I originally thought. It's so interesting. Because you hear a lot about genetic testing. It seems to be very popular, maybe even a competitive space right now, but doing it in a relationship context is a lens that I've never seen before. So that's very cool. All right. So go to instantchemistry.com, order your tests, and figure out how to deal with your partner better. All right. To close things off, question 10 is, what is a lesson you learned the hard way that you'd like to share with our listeners?
A lesson that I learned the hard way. I mean, I kind of learned it along the way. Like I said, like learning how to be resilient and how to like have good people in your life. And I think when I was young, like just starting high school, I kind of learned the hard way that having a negative person in your life can be very negative on you. Someone that I knew from high school. It ended up being like a very rough year trying for me to, like, I thought that we were friends, and then I realized that as we weren't really that much in the way of friends, and just trying to deal with that. And then, well, how do I, now that this person is here in my life and causing me kind of like problems and distress, how do I get them out of my life? And I sort of got lucky in a way that their family moved. And so they left the school, which was a big help to me to try, and because it was like a small school and you see them all the time, and like, how do you, and I kind of learned from that to be sort of cautious right at the beginning, because sometimes if they come into your life and they're too ingrained in your life, it can be very hard to sort of stop the impact that they're having on your life if it is negative. And sort of, I say I learned that the hard way, because I had this person that was very negative on me and negative in my life, and it had a really big impact on me.
How so? Was it a particular conflict? Was it a lot of little things? Was it more their energy and outlook?
It was a lot of different things. It was kind of I'd come from a very, very small public school to it was a small high school, but for me it was a large high school compared to my public school, and it was kind of she was controlling over me. She would bring me down. Like, I remember I tried out for the soccer team and I didn't make the soccer team. And then instead of her reaction being like, oh, well, maybe try again next year, she was like, you really thought you would make the soccer team? Like, I can't believe you actually tried out. Like, why would you even try? You're obviously not a soccer player. Like, that kind of like, response.
Some people can be so mean. What is that?
Like, and
dear teenagers listening to the podcast, please don't do this.
Yeah. Yeah. And then it was kind of like, if I started to try and like stand up for myself or be like, I don't like how you're reacting to me. And then it was kind of like she was sort of starting to get upset, and I was starting to worry about like my safety at times, that she was going to actually like get into a fight with me and like try to beat me up at school. Like, I was worried that I was going to get beaten up going to school for a while.
That's horrible.
Yeah, it was a pretty bad influence. So that's why
that doesn't sound like a friend at all. That sounds like
because when you first you meet her and she's like, you're very friendly and like, oh, I have a friend in high school. I'm just starting. It's grade 9. It's great. Yeah. And then you're like, whoa, what's going on here?
She's totally manipulating me.
Yeah. And then if I'm trying to push her away, now she's getting angry with me, and now I'm scared that I'm gonna get beat up.
Yeah. You're like, that's a girl who needs some therapy.
Yeah.
So what would you have done had she not moved away? What would have been your plan of escape?
Well, it was still kind of I think it helped that she moved away, but she was still come to the school to try and like harass me, I guess, at the school. She'd like wait for me outside and stuff.
Wow. It's terrifying.
So I ended up, I had to put it in bigger hands than my own. I went and I talked to the vice principal at the school.
Good for you.
And it was kind of funny because I went to the guidance counselor in the morning, and I think the guidance counselor, I'd reached my point and I was like, I can't handle this on my own, and I'm scared to come to school, and this isn't right. And I went to the guidance counselor and she was like, oh, why are you here? You like talk about what your future like courses are? And I was like, no, I'm worried I'm going to get beat up.
Oh. Guidance counselor's like, I didn't envision my job to be this difficult.
Yeah. And
sure, you don't want to talk about colleges. Come on.
Yeah. So I had to put it in bigger hands than myself, and I went to the vice principal and they handled it. And it resolved itself after that. And then it was kind of like, but for me, it was like, it was a lesson learned the hard way. And since then I've kind of been like, more like, okay, how are you going to impact on my life? And if I don't like it, maybe I'm going to keep you at more of an arm's reach than somebody who I think will be a positive impact on me. And maybe it's kind of selfish, but at the same time, it's my life. And I don't want to be scared about my life, or like be worried about, what somebody's going to do, or be like, oh, this person is not going to, they're going to tell me that I suck, kind of thing. So that's kind of my lesson that I learned the hard way.
Surround yourself with people who will encourage you and challenge you in the right ways to thrive.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, I can't think of a better way to end things off. Thank you so much for your time. It's been so wonderful to get to know you.
Thank you for coming, and it's been very nice speaking with you.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Find us on Facebook at Legit Lady Podcast. That's LEGITLADY Podcast. And on Instagram at Legit Lady Podcast. On Twitter at Legit Lady Pod. That's Legit Lady POD. And please rate and comment on iTunes and anywhere else you get your podcasts. If you love what you hear, share it broadly and proudly. Thanks, everyone.